For 2 decades, Mufasa did not know what it meant to touch the earth. Most of us can still remember the suffocating feeling of being stuck at home during the COVID-19 lockdown. But for this mountain lion, confinement wasn't a temporary struggle. It was his entire existence. He spent 20 years chained in the back of a rusting pickup truck, forced to live on top of metal equipment, abused, and paraded through the remote villages of Peru. But the reason this story went viral isn't the cruelty. It is the quiet moment that followed a violent armed standoff. You would expect a predator chained for 20 years to be filled with rage, to attack the first hand that came near him. But Mufasa didn't. He reached out and did something so quiet and so heartbreakingly gentle that it brought the entire rescue team to tears. Mufasa's nightmare began when he was stolen from the wild as a cub. He wasn't sold to a zoo or a sanctuary. He was sold to a traveling circus that operated in the lawless fringes of the Peruvian countryside. To his owners, he wasn't a living soul with instincts and needs. He was a prop, a terrifying curiosity used to sell tickets for a few pesos. His prison was uniquely cruel. He didn't even have a cage. Mufasa lived in the open bed of a pickup truck, chained amidst spare tires, iron tent poles. A heavy harness was wrapped around his chest, and a thick chain tethered him to the truck's frame. The chain was so short he couldn't curl up. He couldn't pace. He couldn't even stand fully upright. For 20 years, through scorching heat and freezing mountain nights, Mufasa lived on cold, hard steel. He never felt grass. He never scratched a tree. He existed in a gray world of metal and fear, watching the world pass by from the back of a moving prison. By 2015, Mufasa was an old man. His coat was dull and matted with grease from the truck. His teeth were shattered from gnawing on the iron bars of his confinement. He was a ghost, a forgotten relic of a cruel industry. But the world was changing. In the capital city of Lima, a battle was being fought. Animal Defenders International, ADI, led by the relentless Jan Creamer, had pushed for a landmark ban on wild animals in circuses. The law passed, but passing a law and enforcing it were two different things. The circuses refused to hand over their animals. Instead, they went underground. Jan Creamer and her team launched Operation Spirit of Freedom, a massive manhunt to track down every last illegal circus and confiscate their animals. They raided circuses across the country, saving bears, monkeys, and tigers. But one rumor kept surfacing. The locals whispered about a ghost circus that moved only at night, hidden in the remote northern villages. They spoke of a mountain lion chained to a truck, a creature that had been captive for so long that people thought he was a myth. The team hunted this circus for months. They followed tire tracks and vague tips, always arriving a day too late. The circus owners knew Animal Defenders International was coming. They knew that if they were caught, they would lose their star attraction and face jail time. So they kept moving, dragging the dying Mufasa deeper into the shadows. But time was running out. Mufasa was visibly failing. The years of sleeping on metal had destroyed his joints. His kidneys were shutting down. If the team didn't find him soon, there would be no lion left to save. Then the breakthrough came. A tip-off led the team to a dusty, isolated town, hours from the nearest city. The circus had stopped to set up for a show, unaware that the net was finally closing in. The Animal Defenders International team didn't wait. They mobilized a convoy of trucks, veterinarians, and, crucially, a squad of armed riot police. When the convoy rolled into the village, the tension was palpable. The circus wasn't just a business, it was the local entertainment. The townspeople, riled up by the circus owners, formed a human wall. They blocked the road, shouting and brandishing sticks. They saw the rescuers not as heroes, but as foreigners stealing their livelihood. The circus owner stood in front of the pickup truck, his arms crossed. He looked at the police and spat on the ground. "He is mine," the man shouted. "He is family. You cannot take him." It was a standoff. The police commander stepped forward, his hand on his holster. He presented the seizure warrant. The owner laughed. He whistled, and his workers stepped forward, holding heavy iron bars and wrenches. Jan Creamer watched from the lead vehicle. She knew that one wrong move would turn this rescue into a bloodbath, but she also looked past the angry men. She saw the truck, and there, buried under a pile of dirty tarps and old tires, she saw a pair of golden eyes. Mufasa was looking at her. He didn't look angry. He looked exhausted. "We are not leaving without him," Jan told the commander. "Do what you have to do." The police moved in. It was chaos. Shouting, shoving, and the flash of riot shields. The police formed a perimeter, using their shields to push back the mob and the circus workers. They created a small, fragile bubble of safety around the pickup truck. "Go! Now!" the commander yelled. The Animal Defenders International team sprinted into the gap. They scrambled up the side of the pickup truck. The smell hit them first, the stench of old oil, urine, and fear. Mufasa shrank back against the cab of the truck, hissing weakly. He didn't understand that these people were different. He only knew that humans meant pain. The harness around his chest was a nightmare, a thick belt of leather and steel that had been tightened year after year, buried deep in his fur. The team didn't have keys. The lock was rusted shut, fused by 2 decades of neglect. So they had to cut him out. A rescuer brought out heavy bolt cutters. The metal groaned. Mufasa flinched weakly, his movement slowed by the heavy sedative. "It's okay, boy," the vet whispered, working fast to cut the steel before he fully woke up. "We've got you. Stay with us." With a sharp crack, the iron gave way. For a second, nobody moved. The mob outside was still screaming, the police were still holding the line, but in the bed of that truck, time stopped. The heavy weight that had crushed Mufasa's chest for 20 years was gone. He didn't try to run. He just took a breath, a deep, ragged breath. There was no resistance or steel cutting into his skin. The team carefully lifted his limp body into a travel crate, finally separating him from the cold metal floor that had been his bed for a lifetime. The convoy sped away, leaving the angry mob in the rearview mirror. They drove for hours, leaving behind the dry, dusty mountains and descending into the lush green humidity of the Amazon basin. They weren't taking him to another cage. They were taking him home. His final destination was the Tambopata Reserve, a protected sanctuary in the heart of the rainforest. When they finally arrived, it was morning. They opened the crate. This was the moment that would break the internet. Mufasa stepped out. He walked slowly, his legs stiff and awkward after a lifetime of confinement. He didn't roar. He didn't run. He walked a few feet and stopped. He looked down. Under his paws, there was no cold steel. There was soft, damp earth. He pressed his weight into the dirt, extending his claws, feeling the texture of the soil for the first time in his life. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the heavy, earthy scent of the jungle. Then he did something that brought the entire team to tears. He walked up to a massive tree. In the wild, mountain lions scratch trees to mark their territory. Mufasa reached up and pressed his paws into the rough bark. But he didn't scratch it in anger. He closed his eyes and gently rubbed his face against the wood. It wasn't just instinct. It was a gesture of pure peace. It was the moment he realized he was finally home. The video of Mufasa hugging the tree went viral instantly. It was shared by major outlets like the BBC and gathered millions of views overnight. The world cheered, celebrating the miracle rescue. But back at the sanctuary, the team wasn't celebrating. They were facing a brutal reality. Mufasa was free, but he was broken. The initial medical exam revealed the devastating toll of the circus. His muscles were atrophied, and he had no claws or teeth left to hunt. He was an old warrior who had fought his last battle, but the worst news came from the blood work. His kidneys were operating at less than 30%. "He's living on borrowed time," the head vet told Jan. "Maybe a month, maybe 2. It was a devastating diagnosis. After the manhunt, the standoff, and the viral victory, was it too late? The team made a decision. They knew he could never be released into the wild to fend for himself. They couldn't save his life, but they could save his death. They vowed to make whatever time he had left the best days of his existence. This is the core philosophy of the Animal Defenders International's geriatric rescues: comfort over cure. They built him a custom enclosure in the forest designed specifically for his frail body. They cleared the ground of rocks and filled it with soft sand and dense ferns. They built low platforms so he could climb without pain. They gave him medication to manage his joints and fed him the best meat. For the first time, Mufasa wasn't just surviving. He was living. Mufasa didn't live for years. He was rescued in April 2015, and he passed away in December. He lived for just 8 months. But in those 8 months, he experienced a lifetime of peace. He spent his days sleeping in the sun, belly up, completely exposed. In the wild, you only show your stomach when you know you are safe. And Mufasa knew he was safe. He watched the birds. He listened to the monkeys calling in the canopy. He slept on a bed of dry leaves that are soft, warm, and thousands of miles away from the cold steel of that pickup truck. As his kidneys finally began to fail, he didn't die alone in the back of a truck, terrified and in pain. He died surrounded by the people who had risked their lives to save him. When he finally passed away, it was peaceful. He simply went to sleep in the forest and didn't wake up. Mufasa's story isn't a tragedy. It is a victory. He proved that it is never too late to do the right thing. He spent 20 years in hell, but he didn't die there. He died free. He died knowing what the earth felt like under his feet and what the wind felt like in his fur. His rescue marked the end of an era. He was the last wild animal in a Peruvian circus. His freedom was the final nail in the coffin of a cruel industry. Because of him and the team that fought for him, no other mountain lion in Peru will ever have to live in the back of a pickup truck again. So, look at the picture of Mufasa hugging that tree. Really look at it. It is a reminder that freedom is fragile, precious, and worth fighting for, even if it's just for one last summer in the jungle.